So let's consider yogas. This isn't going to be a talk specifically on listing yogas. There's plenty of books on that. There's also plenty of information online that you can look up all the yogas you want. And there are plenty of yogas. But my goal with this particular talk is to describe what is a yoga. Well, a yoga is a combination of planets, plain and simple. Whenever we have the sun in the fourth house, well, that is a yoga of the sun with the fourth house. Anytime we get Mercury and sun together, Buddha Ditya Yoga, well, that's when, that's again specific to those particular planets coming together. And there are lists and lists and lists of yogas. And I have to admit to you that I never memorized those lists and lists and lists of yogas. Some people do, and they do very well with it. And why is that? Because with these lists, if you memorize them, then you know where planets are, and you look at someone's chart and you get an aha moment. It's like it lights up for you. Your intuition grabs onto it. And that can guide you throughout the session. And again, that's, in my mind, more using the psychic ability of the astrologer or the intuitive ability of the astrologer, which there's nothing wrong with. But I think it's a good idea to develop the understanding of why these yogas are the way they are. Because if you have that understanding, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you know that this is a Balarishta yoga, or if this is a Parvatana yoga, or if this is a Dharma Karma Adipati yoga. It doesn't matter if you know what the name is, because you understand that when these planets get together, this type of thing happens. All right. So yogas are just any kind of combination of planets. Now, the most common one that people look up are the Pancha Mahapurusha yogas, or the 5 main yogas, and also the Raja yogas, so the royal yogas. Now, royal yogas, there's a couple ways that these come together so that you can understand these things. Well, first of all, they're combinations of lords of fortune, or the trinal lords, and lords of action, the angular lords. So the lord of the 5th and the 9th, these are trinal lords. When they are an aspect to, mutual aspect to, angular lords, such as 1, 4, 7, and 10, this is said to create a Raja Yoga. And it's said to give wealth, success, prominence, these sorts of things. Makes one a king, a royal Raj Yoga. And in some ascendants, one planet can be a Raj Yoga. So for example, for a Cancer ascendant, Mars rules the 5th house, and Mars rules the 10th house. Do I have that right? Yes, so Mars rules the 5th and Mars rules the 10th. The 5th is a trine, the 10th is an angle, which makes Mars itself become a Raj Yoga, which means that for a Cancer ascendant, Mars is great. Mars is a good planet, typically speaking. Now, there can be also, I don't know if you call them mild Raj Yogas, but Raj Yogas say when you get the Lord of the 9th in the 10th house. Now, we don't have a combination of 2 planets, but we have something akin to a Raj Yoga occurring, because we have the 9th Lord energy falling into the realm of the 10th house, which can create a type of Raj Yoga and gives desirable results. So it's the combinations of angles and trines together. And it's ideal if these actually occur in an angle or a trine. So if you get a Raj Yoga in the 12th house, sure, that can be good for 12th house things. But the typical idea of prominence, wealth, and success, that works out much better when they're in houses that support that. And if you need to know what those are, again, go back to previous videos and review what the houses mean and how they work. Now, the Pancha Mahapurusha yogas, these are the 5 planets. So, for example, Mars' yoga is called Ruchaka yoga, and it's said to make one fearless and bold and courageous and confront the difficulties in life. And the way these are typically said to form, it's whenever one of these planets, one of these embodied planets, not the sun or the moon, are in its own sign or exaltation sign, as well as in an angular or trinal house. So the planet has to be in its own sign or exaltation sign and in an angle or a trine. Okay, remember that. It can be in its own exaltation, but not in an angle or a trine, and it doesn't give the same results. All right. When it's in an angle or trine, it gives the strength of that planet without obstruction. And so what do you need to know? You need to know, well, what is the quality of those planets? And then that will tell you what are the qualities this person's going to experience. and it will be related to the field in which the yoga is occurring in. So the field is the house. So anyway, Mars, Ruchaka Yoga. We've discussed that. Mercury, Bhadra Yoga. This occurs again when Mercury is in an angle or trine in its own home, and also in exaltation. And Bhadra Yoga gives the qualities of Mercury, which is being extremely organized, being able to manage the affairs of one's life, being intelligent, well-learned, well-versed, these sorts of things. And usually it's more trivia. I mean, I know that sounds interesting. So Mercury can make one know a lot of things, have a lot of facts, right? Hamsa Yoga, which is for Jupiter, this makes one spiritually inclined, devotional, fortunate in life, a lot of grace, a lot of ease, and can give one a broad mind, a broad picture to have wisdom to see just how things work and how everything fits together. And if you think about this, with these planets, for Mercury to be in an angle or a trine, well, it's going to be in either its own home anyway, because the angle being the first house and the 10th house, well, that's its 10th lord. Mercury rules the 10th. Let's just say Virgo ascendant again, and it rules the first. So if we get a Virgo ascendant with Mercury in the first or the 10th, well, it's going to be in its own home or exaltation. So of course that's going to bring out the better qualities of this ascendant. Now, it's not going to happen if that's in Pisces or Sagittarius, because it's not owning its own home. For Jupiter, well, if Jupiter is in Pisces or Sagittarius, and we're talking about a Pisces or Sagittarius ascendant, well, that's even better, because now we have the ascendant lord getting stronger in this regard. Jupiter would be a little bit different, say if we were talking about a Scorpio ascendant. So if Jupiter was exalted, he'd be in the 9th house, which is good, excellent for a Scorpio ascendant. But he doesn't rule the person's first house. You follow my meaning here. So again, there are also levels in this regard that if it's your ascendant and it follows, if it rules your ascendant and it follows these rules, it makes it even better for you. Malavya Yoga. Now, this makes a person wealthy, or can make them self-indulgent, fond of luxuries, being fortunate in love and marriage. And that's Venus's Pancha Mahapurusha Yoga. And Saturn, Shasha Yoga, makes one strong and disciplined. They can attain positions of authority, and they have the capacity to endure where other people fail, meaning that sometimes they succeed just by sheer existing through all the difficulties. So whenever we're thinking about these Pancha Mahapurusha Yogas, we need to think about what is the innate quality of the planet, and then figure out how strong is it going to be if it is one of these yogas. Now, with the Raj Yogas, as I've already talked about, there can be breakers to those. So you might have a Raj Yoga, and a lot of people do, but maybe the 3rd, the 6th, or the 11th Lord is stronger by dignity, by Shadbala, by angular or trinal placement. All these things we need to take into consideration, and that is, again, the important thing, because if you have a Raj Yoga, the combination of 9th Lord and 10th Lord, or angular Lord and trinal Lord, and you think it's going to be so wonderful, but yet you see that that planet is in bad dignity, or they're not in good dignity, well then, number one, that weakens the yoga itself. Number two, now let's say the 3rd Lord's in the same house, or let's say the 11th Lord is in the 7th house, aspecting it, the 7th house aspecting that planet. Well, it's going to break that yoga. And this is where you can get, again, very detailed with your assessment of a person's chart, because you can say, oh, you had these great desires to become a doctor or to become a professor, to go to higher education, but you wasted all your money and your time exploring your hobbies and your interests, and so you never got anywhere. So that'd be the 3rd Lord breaking that yoga. Or you might say, oh, it looked like you aspired to be a great musician, but you were so caught up in being someone, being recognized, being seen, again, 11th Lord gain involved with this Raj Yoga, that you didn't achieve anything, and no one really paid too much attention to you because you were trying too hard for these other things, these titles, these awards, and you missed actually focusing on making good music. So this is how these things play together. Now, with yogas in general, if you want to memorize yogas, well, in the Art and Science of Vedic Astrology, there's a chapter on that, the most important yogas that I've ever used. Also, in the book that's coming out soon, The Art and Science of Vedic Astrology 2, there are more yogas in there. These can deal with the sun, the moon, positions from the sun and the moon. But what I would encourage you to do is not pay too much attention to the names. Figure out why does this come about. Like, for example, let's see here. I've got my book, so we can just look right at it. So this starts on page 110. All right, so an example here. Papakatari Yoga. This is one that most of you probably already know anyway. If malefics, not including the nodes of the moon, occupy the 2nd and 12th houses from the ascendant, it reverses the Shubha Katari Yoga, indicating poor health and financial difficulties. All right, well, do you need to know that it's called Papakatari Yoga to understand that if you have a planet in the 2nd from the ascendant, so the ascendant represents body and personality, and in the 12th from the ascendant, and they're malefics, they're hemming in that ascendant. And when you hem in a house, it brings difficulty to that house. So having malefics hemming in a house will bring difficulty to that house. So Papakatari is specific to the ascendant, which gives poor health and financial difficulties, because there's a malefic on either side, and they have to be on either side. They have to both be there. Now, let's pretend, as this has been the case with a number of people, and one I can remember in particular, the 5th house. Well, the 5th house deals with our creativity and our children. Well, this person had malefics just filling up the houses, both sides of the 5th. So the 4th house had a bunch of malefics. The 6th house had quite a few malefics. They were equal. And so her experience with children is actually terrible because, again, that 5th house is hemmed in. So as we can see, it doesn't matter whether we call it Papakatari Yoga or any of these other names, as long as we understand the principles behind the yogas. That'll help us see what's going to go on in a person's chart. So if you ever catch me at a training and you start throwing out names of yogas to me, I'm not going to know them. Because what I did is I went through the books, and I'll know some of them, but I went through as many books as I could, and I figured out why does that yoga give this. And that means that now when I look at a chart, I can see patterns. And I might not know the names, but maybe it's not the same thing, like with using the example of Papakatari Yoga. I took that principle of hemmed in around the ascendant, causing poor health, financial difficulties, and I realized, well, that'll be the same for every house. So any house that has malefics hemming it on either side will give similar results to that particular area of life. And this is important for when we're doing dashas or timing, because let's say someone goes into a period of Mars and Saturn, Mars-Saturn dasha, or let's reverse it, Saturn-Mars dasha. And let's pretend Mars and Saturn are, Mars is in the person's 8th house, Saturn's in the person's 10th house, which is hemming in the 9th house, which is father, guru, culture, marriage. Well, what I'm going to say then is that during that particular time period, this person's going to feel the difficulty in that area of their life in which the hemming is occurring. Same thing, 2 benefics on either side gives you support, or even just benefics in it gives you support. But anyway, the idea being that if you start to see the patterns and understand the why, think about the why, this will make a lot more sense to you. And you'll move beyond needing your intuition or your psychic power, and you can save that for your meditation, because again, as I've said in previous talks, it's better to maintain your psychic strength, your spiritual strength for meditation, rather than using it to tell the future, because it's more important that you wake up than it is that you tell someone's future. And so if you can learn the mathematical or the systematic approach to astrology, then you're just doing it. You're not wasting any of your energy. You're just step by step by step, it equals this. You do your best, you pass it on, the client does what they can with it. So again, keep this in mind, and think about that with the yogas. There are plenty of books on yogas. You can memorize them if you want, and there's nothing wrong with that, so I don't mean to come across as judgmental in that regard if you do. Whatever makes you a good astrologer. That's always my motto. Whoever you learn from, if they make you a better astrologer, no problem here. Whatever kind of techniques you discover or you practice, if it works, you assist your clients better, that's excellent. So the key is always, as an astrologer, number one, it wakes you up spiritually so that you can perceive the intricacies of the universe and how things work. You don't take things personally anymore. You see God expressing, the self-expressing in all things, as everyone. But also it's a sense of service so that you can help other people see that too. And the more of us that see that, the easier it is for everyone to see that. So always remember this. With meditation, with your spiritual practice, with astrological understanding, the better you understand something, the better we all understand something. So it's worth it to take the time to spend months, years contemplating these things, because it'll help you in the long run. Wherever you are in life, wherever you are in infinity, after this lifetime, before this lifetime, whatever. And then you can also share that knowing and that understanding with others as they come to you and as you can. So anyway, enjoy the rest of your day, and it's a pleasure to talk to you again.